The movie opens with Case Walker, an MMA legend. Though his prime has passed, he hasn't allowed himself to grow rusty. On the contrary, he continues taking part in amateur bouts across Texas, demonstrating his skills like never before. His opponents must be mad to even think about defeating him. After dominating one in the second round, Case becomes frustrated at having to win on points rather than by knockout. His coach reminds him that if he keeps finishing rivals in the first round, no one will want to face him. Nevertheless, Case decides to finish the fight in the third round with a submission. After being crowned victorious, he offers his opponent a few tips to improve. But that doesn't ease his coach's irritation, who quits out of frustration at Case repeatedly disobeying orders. Leaving the arena, Case bumps into the team of the next fighter, among them Brody James, an old friend and fellow MMA enthusiast. Brody admits he's surprised to see Case in a venue like this, given that he's a seasoned professional who should be competing in the major leagues. Following an invitation to a nightclub to catch up, Case finds Brody, now a devoted father, transformed into the life of the party, surrounded by adoring women. Amid all this attention, only Micah Cruz, his new publicist from the PFC, remains unimpressed by Brody's charms, focused solely on contracts and clauses. Alcohol doesn't stop Brody from revealing his plans to Case, disclosing that he has a fight lined up in Bangkok against Cesar Braga, a muscle-bound giant nicknamed the Psychopath. Case is alarmed by the news, warning his friend that the PFC is infamous for extreme violence and lack of rules. Brody then asks Case to help him train for the fight. With the offer in mind, Case prepares to leave the club, but in the parking lot he encounters a couple of shady characters. It turns out they were called by the woman Brody had been entertaining, intending to extort money from him. Fortunately, Case intervenes, defending his friend and teaching the thugs a lesson, sparing the woman out of courtesy. Grateful, Brody insists that Case accompany him to Thailand, presenting a rare opportunity for Case to return to the elite circuit he left behind following his parents' death, which also extinguished his passion for high-level fighting. However, Brody isn't asking him to fight. He wants Case to train him. In other words, he wants Case to be his Miyagi. Eventually, Case decides to travel to the Thai capital for the sake of his friend. Hugo Vega, the PFC owner, excitedly introduces the fight between Brody and Cesar Braga, a giant you wouldn't want to encounter on the street. During the press conference, a reporter questions Cesar about assault charges involving his ex-wife. The question sets Cesar off, and if not for a few brave individuals, the reporter would have left on a stretcher instead of continuing the interview. Vega, ever the businessman, uses the incident to boost promotion. After the press conference, Brody finds Cesar in the bathroom, venting his fury on the mirror, sink, and everything around him. Meanwhile, Case arrives at the Top Fight gym and meets Brody's trainer, Matty Ramos, who is understandably displeased that Brody brought in a helper without consent. Ignoring Ramos's disapproval, Case sets up his own training corner with materials scavenged from the street, proving that if you don't train, it's only because you don't want to. Meanwhile, Cobra Connor, a young, arrogant fighter, mocks Case's movements, calling him a cheap Bruce Lee. Luckily, Brody arrives before any conflict escalates. Seeing that Ramos is preoccupied with Brody, Cobra reminds him that he has an upcoming fight and wants his opponent to be the Black Jackie Chan. Insistent, Case steps into the ring, giving Cobra the fight he demanded. While Cobra fights fueled by rage, Case remains calm, waiting for the perfect moment to test his Kyokushin techniques, a style of karate. After teaching Cobra a hard lesson, Case earns the respect and perhaps fear of the other fighters. His abilities catch the attention of Hugo Vega, who wonders who caused his protege Cobra to require medical attention. Vega is even more surprised when he discovers that the culprit is Case Walker, someone he already knows, and not fondly. Knowing he can't convince Case to join his agency, Vega leaves the gym. However, he is intercepted by Tash, a young fighter eager to showcase his talent. Case offers to spar with him, barely resisting, which only frustrates Vega further. Despite MMA Cruz insisting Case is a gold mine not to be wasted, Vega remains concerned. Meanwhile, Tash and his friend Creech approach Case, curious why he held back in the ring. Calmly, as someone who has seen it all, Case explains that he has nothing to prove to Vega and that his lesson for Cobra was simply necessary. Speaking of lessons, the young fighters express interest in learning some of his techniques, so Case offers to teach them, but only after his training session. It turns out this is a tactic to get rid of them, as his session won't end until nightfall. To his surprise, the boys wait patiently. With no way out, Case begins instructing them. The next day, a team of reporters arrives at the gym to interview Brody and promote his upcoming fight against Cesar. Despite the reporters' focus on Brody and the build-up to his fight with Cesar, they can't help but become fascinated by the legendary Case Walker, whom many believed had retired long ago. Determined to earn Case's trust, Micah Cruz arranges a professional dinner with him. While Case is unmatched in the ring, interacting with women isn't exactly his forte. With little confidence, he turns to Tash and Crit for guidance. They help him choose an outfit and offer advice straight out of a teen magazine. When the dinner approaches, Case stops to pick up flowers and meets a young girl who assists him in choosing the perfect bouquet, precisely because she knows her mother's taste. As part of the evening's plan, Micah surprises Case in a way that advances the plot. Meanwhile, Ramos accidentally discovers Case's date with Micah. Soon after, he meets with Vega, who expresses frustration over Brody's lack of focus, claiming Brody spends more time in women's beds than in the gym. With the fight against Caesar approaching, Vega hands Brody a contract from a supplier offering steroids and other performance-enhancing substances to transform him into a physical powerhouse. Adding fuel to the fire, Ramos mentions to Brody that he spotted Case with Micah and her daughter, dropping the news like a bomb meant to motivate him further. Back at the date, Case handles himself well until Micah asks about his time in prison, a topic he refuses to discuss, leaving abruptly to avoid recounting past experiences from his previous encounters. Returning to the gym, Case is immediately confronted by a furious Brody waiting in the ring. As expected, such a meeting doesn't bode well. Brody unleashes a furious mix of punches and kicks, anger fueling his every move. Though Case never intended to hurt his friend, the situation escalates when Brody drives a knee into his head. Naturally, Case retaliates in kind until Ramos intervenes, stopping the escalating fight. Feeling remorseful, Case apologizes to Brody, though the apology seems insufficient. Learning of this altercation, Vega begins to perceive Case as a potential problem and instructs his team to dig into Case's past, confident there must be something incriminating. Later, Micah meets with Case and, after offering apologies for prying, reveals that her intentions were to determine if he was capable of being a good partner and father to her daughter. Moved by this, Case begins to imagine a life where he isn't perpetually alone. Returning to the gym, Case notices Brody secretly taking pills. Although he sees what's happening, he chooses to act as if he didn't, inviting Brody to resolve their conflicts maturely without any further physical confrontations. Now calmer, Brody apologizes for his earlier aggression, admitting he had long desired a chance with Micah, yet he recognizes that Case is a better match for her. Case replies that, after all, Brody is a married man. In response, Brody vows to quit using steroids and commit to improving in every way. He also ensures both Case and Ramos promise to maintain harmony, as they share the same goal, to become stronger fighters. With tensions resolved, Brody fully immerses himself in training for his battle against Caesar. Meanwhile, Case continues to grow closer to Micah during another date. When he drops her off at her home, she casually mentions that her daughter is with a babysitter, a subtle hint that Case may not realize for years. The following day, Case receives a formal contract from the PFC inviting him to become one of their fighters. Clearly, they hadn't realized he wasn't interested in their manipulative games. Case returns the contract to Vega, accompanied by a note of refusal. Enraged, Vega orders his assistant to dig even deeper into Case's history. Later, Case finds gym members watching a video of him confronting a group of police officers. It's revealed that these officers, motivated by prejudice, had planted drugs in his RV to frame him. Naturally, Case didn't allow himself to be victimized and fought back, giving the corrupt officers a well-earned beating. While Case is unsettled by the video going public, Vega grows increasingly frustrated with the promotion for the upcoming fight. Fans cheer wildly for Caesar's reputation of brutality, yet Brody barely generates any reaction, further fueling Vega's concern. Brody's performance barely elicits any reaction from the crowd, leading Vega to the conclusion that Case must step into the ring himself. The video of Case's past confrontation with the authorities had been strategically released for this very reason. In recognition, or perhaps as a bribe, Case is offered a lavish house by Vega. Reluctant to accept, he receives a bit of encouragement from M at the gym, which motivates him to reconsider. Case is taken aback when he sees Brody training alongside Boris, a newly arrived fighter whose intentions seem dubious. Both Case and Ramos sense something off, and their suspicions prove valid when Boris deliberately injures Brody's knee. Faced with this betrayal, Case starts packing to leave, but Vega intervenes with an offer he can't easily refuse: $1 million. With that, the seasoned veteran Case Walker makes his official return to the MMA spotlight. And who better to face than the intimidating Cesar Braga? While Brody stands by him, Tash expresses disappointment at Case, seemingly selling out to someone like Vega. This moral dilemma shakes Case, forcing him to confront the reality that Brody's injury might not have been accidental. Investigating further, Case unlocks Boris's locker and discovers a message confirming that Boris had been paid by Vega to sabotage Brody. Without hesitation, Case confronts Boris publicly in the gym, exposing the truth in front of everyone. With the deception revealed, Case begins meticulously planning how to defeat Caesar while simultaneously taking down Vega, a challenge that promises no easy solutions. On the night of the fight, Vega arrives accompanied by Micah, who promptly informs him that she is resigning. Meanwhile, Case deliberately provokes Caesar well before the match begins. Enraged, the massive fighter charges at Case, sparking a ferocious battle that spills outside the designated combat area. At least the crowd witnesses the spectacle firsthand. Despite his best efforts to subdue Caesar, nothing seems effective. If anything, it only fuels the giant's rage. After enduring a punishing combo of blows, Case nearly collapses but recovers, removing his gloves and switching to his most devastating technique, Kyokushin, a style of karate with strikes powerful enough to incapacitate. Caesar's ribs crumple under the assault, and Case finishes the fight with a combination of an underkick and a spinning kick, moves worthy of a master like the Karate Kid. Humiliated and enraged, Vega threatens to sue Case for allegedly violating the terms of the fight. However, Case stays one step ahead, presenting proof of Vega's orchestration of Brody's injury, making any lawsuit a fool's errand. To add insult to injury, Vega is also forced to refund the spectators, ensuring that his day only gets worse. With Vega defeated both inside and outside the ring, Case, Micah, Brody, and the rest of their team earn the audience's admiration. They didn't just win a fight, they reclaimed their dignity and respect, leaving a lasting impression on everyone who witnessed it. Like and subscribe for more recaps like this.